Hey yo, my life be like a bad dream. Could've swore I woke up. I married my religion, now I'm pretty sure we broke up. And now my family toe up. Hostage like a hold up. I'm thinking, damn, when that common sense supposed to show up.
I want to welcome Cliff Henderson, and we are very, very lucky to have you on us. I feel very privileged because I see what you have done with your freedom. I see what you have done with your talent. You're gonna tell us a little bit more in a second. So I thought I gotta reach out to you. I gotta tell you. I gotta talk to you. I gotta ask you questions. You know how you got to your music and rapping and everything. It's very exciting. So, but before we go there, please, Cliff, tell us what is your history with JWs? How did you start?
Well, first of all, Jack, really want to thank you for extending the invitation and having me on. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. So my background with Jehovah's Witnesses is that I was born into a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm one of 5 children, and I'm the 4th child of the 5. So, and even before that, my father was baptized when he was 17, and my mother was baptized when she was 7. So, by the time they got married, obviously they were very devout Jehovah's Witnesses, and my older siblings were born into Jehovah's Witness family. So I'm not sure how far you want me to get into it, but I was baptized when I was 9 years old as a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, I was. I gave my first talk when I was.
More or less the same age, because 9 is quite young, even for JWs. I find it quite young.
Definitely. Like I said, my mom was born at 7, so she has me beat. But of the children, I was definitely the youngest. After me, I actually got baptized on the same day as 2 of my sisters, and one of my sisters was 11, the other sister was 13. Wow. And then my brother got baptized like at 16 or something like that. But yeah, definitely, I was the youngest of the siblings to get baptized for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why didn't you continue? What happened? Did you get this scholarship? Did they kick you out? Did you leave for yourself? Like what happened?
Yeah, so I've always kind of struggled to tell a short version of this story, but I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to do it on this occasion. So basically what happened is, I went to, if most of your viewers are familiar with Jehovah's Witness terminology, I was in 2 foreign language congregations. I was in a Spanish congregation. I was in a Portuguese congregation.
Oh, cool.
I was a ministerial servant. I was a regular pioneer. I was in what they call Bethel in Wallkill, for a little over a year.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so
to stop that, what did you do there? What did you do in Bethel?
So at Bethel, I was in the shipping department. So I worked in, I'm forgetting the terms now. It's been a long time, but I was in, it was called the pick loop. It was literature. So basically packing literature and sending it out. And I was getting trained shortly before I left. I was getting trained for materials handling. So it's like driving the forklifts and, moving the pallets in a warehouse and that kind of thing. I was a tour guide as well in both Spanish and English. That was basically it. That was basically what I did.
Was Bethel life pretty much what you expected, or was it totally different?
To be honest, it was similar to what I expected, in the context of, a young kid who, since I was 11 years old, my email passwords were Bethelite and stuff like that. Like, that was like my dream. My uncles went to Bethel, all that kind of stuff. In the Jehovah's Witness context, I actually looked upon it favorably, even, while I was there and even shortly after, because, I was able to meet people from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and kind of see this organization that I was a part of, kind of see it from a different angle and things like that, and kind of be around some people that you saw in videos, and even just little things like that. Right. Again, in that context, at that time, I viewed it as something that was, pretty cool, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what caused you to leave JWs?
Yeah, so we'd have to fast forward. So I left Bethel when I was 21, and then I left the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 28. So it's fast forwarding, quite a few years. Okay. So basically what happened with me is over the years, I had kind of just always had questions in my mind. There's just things that just didn't seem to make sense, but I was deathly afraid of what they refer to as apostates. I was I refused to do any research or anything like that. What happened with me is I had a couple of friends who I really respected who were also like either they were friends at Bethel or you know, friends that went and did what they call serve where the need is great, you know, go to other countries and try to recruit basically, you know, people. I had some people in kind of those high positions that walked away from this organization, right? And that was kind of like, you know, they kind of talk about apostates and things like that in the organization. And they want you to kind of slap all of these adjectives, all these negative adjectives on them, right? They're rebellious, they're haughty, they're whatever these terms are, right? But when you have people that you know very well, that you know were fully dedicated, all of a sudden up and leave, and then you try to say, well, you just try to apply the organization's adjectives and say, well, they were like this and like that. You're like, they weren't really like that. Like I knew them pretty well, so I'm sure there was probably something to it. But you don't really allow yourself to go there because it's kind of, you know, in the context of being a Jehovah's Witness, it's kind of a dangerous road. But I kind of pushed that down for years. I didn't talk to them. You know, they weren't trying to reach out to me, anything. But that just kind of always was in the back of my mind. And then just more things happened. Like, let me see. Well, okay, so like fast forwarding towards the end, you know, so at this time I was a ministerial servant. I was, you know, giving public talks in 3 languages. You know, I was like conducting the congregation Bible study in Portuguese. Like I was very, very, very involved. I was actually asked to be an elder. I turned it down because I felt, you know, inadequate. You know, that was just kind of the name of the game in there for me. I just always felt like I'm not doing as well as this person, or, you know, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do or whatever. So I actually turned down becoming an elder, but they were training me, you know, to do that. But during all of that time, so a friend of mine who I was at Bethel with, that we had continued to be friends, said, hey, I heard Jeffrey Jackson is on YouTube defending the organization, right? And that was the Australian Royal Commission. To this day, I don't think he saw it. I think he just heard about it, and whatever he heard was something positive, that this is like this is a kick in the teeth to Satan or whatever, right? It's a response to Satan. So I was having, at this point, my doubts, even though I had all of these responsibilities in the congregation and everything, like my doubts were starting to just bug me, right? They just kept kind of eating away at me. And so I was actually thinking, wow, thank Jehovah, right? Maybe this will be an opportunity for me to strengthen my faith, right? So I watched the Australian Commission, and obviously, I'm sure you've seen the Australian Commission. You know that it would have the opposite effect on anybody who was thinking about that. So I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, this is worse. Like, this is so much worse than how I felt before. Because now I'm almost embarrassed to be a witness now, because you know, when you hear the judge, how he was expressing himself, like, isn't it cruel? You know, these are reasonable people, and they're expressing, you know, things about the organization's policies that are really just terrible if you're not already drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, right? Yes. And so after I heard that and I saw that, you know, I just kind of continued just like, man, something's wrong, but I wouldn't do any research, you know, whatever. Eventually what happened is, I ended up moving away about an hour away from where I'm from for work. And, you know, I told the elders, like, you know, I'll when I get to a congregation, you know, send my car, I'll let you guys know. But to be honest, it kind of worked. The timing worked out because I had to move away for work, but I was also at a point where the cognitive dissonance was very strong. Yeah. And I was really having trouble saying all of this stuff at the doors and on stage. Like, something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but something inside of me it just wasn't working out. So eventually what happened is I stopped going to the meetings, kind of conveniently, you know, because I had moved away. I stopped going for a couple of months, and then like I would even try to go every once in a while, and then I would leave, like something was wrong, you know, going to these other congregations. And so then eventually I talked to my dad, who's an elder, who's been an elder since as long as I can remember. My dad knew, you know, that I didn't tell him everything, but I just kind of told him I'm discouraged, you know, use one of those kind of generic terms. And he basically, you know, he said, well, you know, maybe Satan has just confused you, and, you know, whatever kind of the stock answer. And, you know, maybe you should try again, like go back to the meetings or whatever. So by that time, I had like, you know, been hanging out with a girl and all of these different things, right? So because I've always tried to do things right, you know, at least in the context of that. So like, if anything I would do, I would go and tell the elders. Like if it was any little thing, you know, I'm just trying to make sure I'm good. I don't want to.
Yeah, I was the
I
same
don't
way.
want to hinder. I don't want to hinder the Holy Spirit. You know,
That's
I'm a
right.
ministerial servant. You know, I was really sincere about it. So, you know, at this point, like I said, I hadn't been at the meetings and I had been, you know, hanging out with a girl or whatever. So before I even started trying to go back after my dad kind of said, yeah, you know, give it another try. Don't like throw away everything that you've worked for, everything that you built.
Ah,
So I was going to put my best foot forward. I called the elders. I was like, hey, you know, I've been having doubts. I haven't been at the meetings. I've also, you know, these other things have happened, and you know, I just, we can meet and maybe, you know, I'm giving it another chance, right, to see if I can get my faith back, right? So obviously, you can't go into a judicial committee situation and say, hey, I've committed this sin, right, in their eyes, and I'm not 100% sure that this is the correct organization, right? But I was just
it
trying to
only
be
goes one
honest.
way.
Yeah, it's like you know, but I was really being sincere. Like I was really, in my mind, I'm like, you know, I want to give Jehovah something to bless if this is right, you know, kind of thing. So I told them myself, and you know, obviously they just kind of keyed in on that, and you know, so I was disfellowshipped. So after that, you know, I was like, okay, fine, I'm disfellowshipped. I'm gonna start going back to the meetings now and try to, but it never really took. Like 2 months later or a month later or something, I said, you know what, I got to research this because this is never going to go away. I'm just going to always be in this limbo situation, right? It's unfortunate I'm already disfellowship, but, you know, I got to figure something out. So I started doing my research and it didn't take long. I mean, you know, once I started on Wikipedia, that led to Raymond Friends, that led to Crisis of Conscience, that led to the John Cedars channel, and then all these other channels and these other. I also read Don Cameron's Captives of a Concept, which I think doesn't get enough credit in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. I think that's a very, very powerful book for people who are trying to, you know, to wake up. But anyway, once I did that, it was kind of like, yep. Everything that I saw, it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm not crazy. Unfortunately, I'm already disfellowshipped, right? So then it was, you know, I don't want to get ahead of what your questions might be, but well, I'll just stop there. So I basically I came to the conclusion that like, okay, so it's not true. This is not true, and now it's just a matter of, you know, where do I go from here?
Tell me, how did that affect you psychologically? What did you go through emotionally? Because that is a huge psychological shift for somebody who was especially raised in it. Because those who
Yeah.
join, a lot of times they just go back to where they used to be. Somebody who was
Mm-hmm.
raised in a family, Bethel, and you just wanted to make sure that everything is right. It was the same thing with me. I would go to the elders, explain myself, you know, stupidity. But I always wanted to make sure that, you know, I'm good with Jehovah. So I know
Right.
how crushing it was for me to realize that the whole thing is a scam. It was really tough. How was it for you?
Right. It was terrible. It was terrible. And you know what makes shunning so effective, you know, and the reason why it's a perfect business model for what they're doing is because, especially in my case, I'll back up slightly. In my case, you know, I'm coming to this realization. I'm thinking like, oh man, I didn't go to college. You know, I had great grades in high school. My counselors was like, well, you know, they were all like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you going to college? And I'm like, I'm going to Bethel. Get behind me, Satan. That's what I'm thinking, and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is I just wasted. You know, you're coming to all these things, and then it was really devastating, man. It was really devastating. And then on top of that, and this is why I say the shunning is so effective. So now the people who I would go to if I'm having something, you know, happen in my life, they are gone. They're 100% gone. My parents, my siblings, everybody that I ever met. Because like I said, I was a pretty, um, you know, I told the line. You know, I didn't even have friends that were not Jehovah's Witnesses when I was a witness and stuff like that. So I pretty much I lost 100% of the people that I knew. There really wasn't anybody left, right? So it's like I'm left to kind of deal with this new reality and no support whatsoever, right? Like there's literally like no human that that I've known for any period of time. So it was really difficult. I had a very, very tough time with it, coming to grips with the fact that everything that you believed in is not true. And then also not being able to get any comfort or communication whatsoever, with the people that you rely on in your life, your friends, your siblings, your parents, all of that kind of stuff. So, I was extremely depressed, very depressed. Like I would just go to work and then just kind of sit in my apartment. Like, what's the point? What's the point of anything? I had suicidal thoughts for sure. I was taking medication, for a while. I was taking depression and anxiety medication for actually a couple of years. And yeah, it was really, really tough. I wrote an email to my dad because what happened is when I got disfellowshipped, because I didn't know which way it was going to go. And in my mind, I was going to try to like give my parents some hope, I guess, within their world and say like, there's just some things I'm working through and, I'm going to make it back or whatever. In my mind, that was like the nice thing to say if I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And so basically, I wrote an email to my dad and I basically told him, I didn't even go into details, but I was like, I don't believe it anymore. Is there any, what can we do? I didn't know that this is how people ended up out. I thought they were just bad and sided with Satan, even though they knew that Jehovah was the true God, which doesn't really make any sense, right? But that's kind of what they teach you or whatever. So yeah, it was just very, very difficult. I had a tough time with it for sure.
Yeah, I know for myself it was the same thing because my wife didn't wake up right away. So I was like, okay, I thought she would, but then she didn't. So I'm like, okay, for the sake of the family,
right,
I'm just gonna keep going. Maybe I can just go, on Sundays and keep my mouth shut. It'll be fine.
Right.
It's a torture. You literally,
it is.
like, it's internal torture. That's how I
Absolutely.
feel, right? So, well, tell me, why wouldn't you go back?
So okay, that's an interesting question. Like I said,
you don't want to go back. Sorry.
yeah, yes, no, that's true. So the thing is, like I said, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I really believed it and I really followed it to the best of my ability. So, I guess I don't know if you mean like go back under, just kind of play the game and go back so I can
to
have
have your
relationships.
family and friends, right? Like
Yeah, I just don't know if I'm capable of doing that. I just, and I have nothing but respect for people that do. I understand why people would do that, and I think it's, I don't say that my situation is desirable by any stretch of the imagination. So, if that's what people are able to do, then that's fine. I just think, I just wasn't able to bring myself to kind of go through the motions. It was kind of like, this is a terrible situation. I hate being without my family, but, I just couldn't see myself saying, yes, like I learned my lesson and, going to the meetings and doing all this stuff. Like it almost like disgusted me at this point once I realized all of this that had been taken away from me, so I couldn't bring myself to do it. Kind of an interesting kind of side point to that. It's not directly related to the question, I guess, but so after, at some point I did have a conversation with my parents. I drove to their house, just showed up. Like I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just showed up and was like, don't you guys understand? Like I can't, this is not a decision I'm making as far as belief. Like I literally don't believe it. It doesn't match up. So like, should I be penalized for that? And I asked my mother point blank, I said, Mom, I said, I have the elder's book. I was about to be an elder. I know what the steps are. If I wanted to get, this is before I started speaking out, but I said, if I want to get reinstated, I can. I was like, but I'm going to tell you right now, if I were to get reinstated, it would be under false pretenses. It wouldn't be because I believe this. It would just be because I'm just going to game the system, basically, right? And I looked at my mom and I said, if I get reinstated under those, false pretenses, would you have a relationship with me? And she said, yes, I would. And I said, but why? I'm telling you, like, and I wasn't going to really do it. It was more just kind of almost to prove a point. And she said, basically Jehovah wouldn't let you in unless it was, unless there was some legitimacy to it, or he saw something good in your heart, even though you're saying that right now, right? So it just kind of shows the mental gymnastics, right? You can put something right in someone's face, and that, what's funny is that my dad, on the other hand, he's sitting there, he's an elder. I'm sure he knows better. He knows people have gamed the system. I'm sure he still believes it, but he knows. I remember people who got reinstated and never showed up at a meeting ever again, and I always wonder why. But my mom is able to say, no, Jehovah would never allow that. He would never allow that to happen. So anyway, so yeah, that was kind of my situation.
It's like, is you're convinced or you're not convinced, and some people think it's a choice. It's not a choice. We're rather convinced or we're not convinced.
Right.
You know what I mean, some people, they see or hear very little evidence. Some evidence are weird to us, but they believe it. You know what I mean? And they're convinced that it's true.
Exactly.
And somebody else will be like, I need a little bit more. But it's, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the fact that if you're convinced, it's one way. If you're not convinced, it goes the other way, right?
Exactly.
For us to pretend, it's a torture. And then you realize, hey, maybe the love that was there was all conditional based on your status in the congregation. It's not even based on your position in the congregation. It's the status. You're in or you're not. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with what kind of person you are, which I think this is the most sad. That you can be a very cruel person, but if you have a good status in the congregation, you can be the best person out there, the most loving, caring, and giving and contributing. But if your status is not as an active witness, then you don't matter. And I think this is very cruel.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, okay, let's get into the point of your music. How did that play a role in your life? What did you do with your life after?
So, well, I'll go back a little bit if we're going to discuss the music, just very briefly to kind of give some context, because some people are like, okay, you went from a ministerial servant and now you're a rapper. Like, it makes
I know
no
you
sense,
wanted
right?
to be a circle of his year. I see that is not on your to-do list anymore.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, I was telling you before we got on on camera that my goal had always been to be a circuit overseer, even when I was at Bethel. So it's just kind of funny. But so as far as, music has always been kind of big in my family or whatever. Obviously, rap music was frowned upon in the organization, even specifically when you talk about Bethel, right? At those times, rap was on the Bethel application. Have you listened to rap, heavy metal, or any other type of music inappropriate for Christians in the last year? Yes. So the year before I applied, this is how sincere I was. The year before I applied, I stopped listening to rap music just so I can answer that question, honestly. But I had always, it just spoke to me for whatever reason. I come from I don't come from the best neighborhood, even though I was a Jehovah's Witness and I wasn't really involved in anything going on in the streets, obviously. But, I saw poverty around me, and I saw some of the things that was expressed in rap music. And it resonated with me, right? And I enjoyed the rhythm. It just always spoke to me. So like I would make little songs just for myself, or just like for my friends, like make parodies of songs or whatever, just because. And it was something that I always just had a passion for, but I just wasn't able to really pursue it, obviously. And even when I would make those songs just for those couple of friends, the content was very, it has to kind of be in this certain little box or whatever. Like I even made like a little song about like, pioneering or, just things of that nature, right? That I would never share with anybody in any serious way. So basically, that was the extent of my like rapping, if you will, or my, my relationship with rap music as a Jehovah's Witness. So once I left, I did activism. I have my channel XJW Fifth, and I have like over 40 interviews there. And, it just got to a certain point where I said, you know what, I've always been fascinated with this. I know it doesn't make sense. It's not gonna make sense to a lot of people, whether ex-witnesses or not ex-witnesses. They're gonna be like, why is this guy what is this guy doing, whatever. But I was like, this is what I want to do, right? So this is me taking back some control, of my life, and like just doing something because I can, and that I'm willing to do it. I'm not scared. There's nothing to fear. I might as well just go ahead and do it, put myself out there and that kind of thing. So, but even prior to that, before I decided I'm going to put it out there, I was like kind of, playing around with it a little bit more. Like I was like, I kind of bought a little bit of equipment and I was like making songs and stuff. And obviously the subject matter expanded because now there's not limits on what I could say or whatever. It's just kind of whatever I can say. Yeah. And then eventually, yeah, just basically kind of got to a point where, I had some friends that were like, man, this is good, bro. Like you should put your music out. Like, you should do it. And then, it was kind of like, well, why not? Sure, I'll do it. So, I kind of had some songs, and then I did my first professional recording last year, ever. That was my first professional recording ever. It just so happened that this guy that I went to high school with is now an engineer. He does like mixing and mastering in the area that I live in Northern California, near San Francisco. He's kind of well known, among rappers. He has a little recording set up in his house. And so anyway, I kind of talked to him and, I booked some studio time and I recorded some songs. And then, I decided to shoot a music video. It's just kind of things, just little by little. I'm just asking him, okay, so what's the next step? What do people normally do? How do you get a video, or how do you get, art, or what are those effects that you hear in the background when people are recording music? Like, I didn't know any of those things, right? So, yeah, just kind of one thing led to another. And when I decided to do the music, I didn't necessarily decide like, okay, I'm going to make an ex-Jehovah's Witness anthem, or I'm even going to talk about being an ex-Jehovah's Witness. But it just so happened that I was saying like, this is my story, and like I said, that's one of the things that always appealed to me about rap music. The type of rap music that I would like is whatever people come from, whatever experience they have, if it's authentic and if it's, what they have experienced in their lives, it resonated with me, so that's what I decided to do. I said, this is not a popular story or a popular subject matter in rap music or any kind of music really, but this is my story. So I'm going to talk about this. So, I did it. I got with a videographer who actually, if your audience knows a little bit about rap music, he actually records for like Kendrick Lamar, who's a very big, rapper, and different people like that. He shoots videos for people in his group and stuff like that. So, just through social media, I let him hear the song, and he's like, yeah, man, I'll do this. Like he appreciated what I was trying to do. It was different. And he's like, yeah, I'll get behind it. So I flew down to where he is in Southern California, and then I put an album together, and I put that out, and it's being supported really well.
Yeah, tell me about the response.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the music video. My song "Cost of Doing Business" is my first single, and that's the one that's directly dealing with growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and then being shunned. And there's a music video and everything, and that's gotten up to, I just announced recently, over 20,000 views on YouTube, which is, I talked to, for example, my friend,
in what
engineer.
period of time?
So I dropped that video on January 31st, so a little less than 6 months.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah. So I talked to, like I said, my friend who he records for these bigger artists, and yeah, a lot of artists don't get up to those numbers, so it kind of put it into perspective, like, wow, it's because it's something that really, resonates with people. So that video is doing really well. The album is doing, decently, I think, for somebody like me who doesn't have any, I don't have like a machine behind me or a label or anything. It's basically just word of mouth. I get definitely a lot of support from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, even though, my album is not, it's not a bunch of songs just about the experience of being an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but, there's subtle references to it that I think if you're paying attention and you are ex-Jehovah's Witness, you'll be like, oh, I know what he means when he says, I lost, whatever it is that I'm saying in the songs. And so, yeah, it's been a really positive response so far. And, I'm in the process of just kind of making more music. It's unfortunate, with coronavirus, just in the context of what we're talking about, I had some shows lined up and stuff like that. And, like I said, I was trying to go full on with this thing and, do concerts and all that kind of stuff. So I was working on that, and then that just kind of shut everything down. So, that's going to, that's going to kind of make me have to reevaluate my plans in terms of how I'm going to do it. But, you know, as soon as things open up, even if they open up a little bit more, I'm going to be, you know, doing shows and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, hoping people continue to support it.
I hope that you will join us when we start doing our seminars again, because we're doing seminars. We did 3 already. We're already scheduled
Okay.
for the next one when the corona hit. So maybe one day you'll come to our seminar and perform there. That would be super awesome to have you there.
I would love to. You guys are in, is it Southern California, or where are you guys located?
Well, I'm in Toronto.
Okay.
Right. So, but empowered minds, they're all over the world. We did
Okay.
one in California, in LA. We did one in
Okay.
Dallas, and we did one in New Jersey.
Mm.
We're thinking about doing Chicago and Toronto. Right.
Okay.
That's those 2 next. But
Yeah, let me know. I would love to come out. I would love to come out. I would love to perform. I would love to speak. You know, it would be my privilege.
That'll be fantastic to have you. I got one more question for you. I'm always
All
asking
right.
this whoever I interview.
Okay.
If you could stand in front of the governing body right now and they could
Mhm.
actually listen to you, what would you tell
Oh man, that's tricky.
them?
That's so tricky. Um, you know, I think I'm a little cynical when it comes to just how sincere I think those men are, you know, so I think that will probably influence what I would be motivated to say, like, as, you know, wondering if they were really going to, you know, to kind of take it seriously. But, you know, I think I would just tell them that you can't blackmail people into, you know, being in this group. You know, I think the worst thing is the shunning. You know, that's why my shirt, you know, you're asking me before, you can't really see the shunning, but
Right there, yeah.
yeah. So these are actually my shirts on the XJW Fit YouTube channel. I have a link. But anyway, I think that's the worst thing is, you know, people's lives are being ruined. You know, I have friends personally, like close friends, who have attempted suicide, you know, behind this. And we all have heard stories, or maybe, you know, people personally who have actually carried out the act and who have actually committed suicide, or, you know, deal with depression and all of these other things, you know. I would just say, if they were in the mood to bargain, I would say just get rid of shunning. If you just get rid of shunning, I honestly feel there's a lot of other issues with the organization. But I think if at least people had the freedom to talk to who they talk to, whoever they wanted to talk to, and, you know, not feel forced to remain in this group, you know, I would almost say, don't you want people who really want to be there, you know, as opposed to, you know, people who are there because they have a gun to their head because you're going to take away their whole family and have them end up like me or like other, you know, other people in my situation. I think I would just, you know, and I would hope that they would be listening and hope that they would, you know, genuinely hear that. But yeah, that's probably would be, you know, be the message. Just please stop this fellowshipping and this shunning, because this is really ruining people's lives, like in a very real and tangible way. You know.
I agree 100%, because every religion out there, we might find something we disagree with. That everybody's got their own, you know, different set of beliefs or doctrines that we might look at and even roll our eyes, you know, wondering why people believe this. But truthfully, everybody should have that freedom to believe whatever it is that they want to believe, without having that fear of, if I say that I don't believe, everybody will shun me, right? I think
Exactly.
that's you hit it. You hit the nail on the head there.
Right.
What would you tell people who are still in it, mentally out? They realize this is not right, but they're terrified of being shunned. What would you tell them as an advice?
I would say, honestly, my advice would be do what is best for you in your situation. Because for some people, you know, pretending, so to speak, you know, kind of pretending to believe and going out in service and doing all of these things is really, it just eats at your soul, right? And for some people, that are in that situation, friends that I have that are in that situation, it might even be worse than having your whole family stripped away. On the other hand, my situation is not desirable either in that way, I don't think, right? So I really think it's, I think in my situation, because it was kind of emotional and I didn't know any better, I kind of, I wasn't able to kind of make a strategic decision, right?
Yes.
You know, but yeah, I would just tell people, just really analyze your situation, and understand that. I think there's, I've had friends that have been like, if I leave, my mom won't stop talking to me, and every once in a while that happens, but I wouldn't count on that. Like, if you're going to, leave in any official way or in any public way, expect to lose these people. Or if they even catch up with you, the elders catch up with you or catch something you're doing, like, just know that that's always a possibility. So that way, when that does happen, you're more, mentally prepared for it. But like I said, I think there are some people who would say, definitely do this or definitely do that. And, like I said, just do whatever is best for your own situation. I would also kind of add to that, regardless of if you're, physically in, mentally out, or whatever, I would encourage therapy. I'm actually a big proponent of therapy. I think it just kind of helps to talk with somebody who's trained to listen to these types of things. And especially the therapists that I've gone to, they had either been in a cult themselves, or they just were very experienced with that. I think mental health is something that we just can't overlook. You really have to look out for your mental health, whatever it is you decide to do, because this is a very traumatic, experience, especially if everybody is cut off. So I hope that answers the question.
I remember I was actually considering therapy, but because I was still believer to a certain extent, I didn't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name. You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't want to start complaining about the organization and about, the doctrines. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just falling for the Satan's trap? And then later on, I realized it was all wrong. And now I brought bad witness to that therapist, right?
Exactly.
It's crazy. Now when I think about it, it's like, wow, to what extent, my mind was controlled. It's amazing, right? But
absolutely.
Looking into professional, and what changed it for me is I went for some seminars, and at the seminars I started talking to coaches, and they helped me to realize, buddy, you're brainwashed. Literally, they didn't say it out loud that way, but they helped me to realize that, hey, it is because I believe that if I leave, then it's my fault that people are shunning me, because it was my decision. I knew the consequences, right? Everybody knows that, oh, you write the letter, right? And everybody's shining you. It's your decision to separate yourself from the congregation. You know the consequences. Therefore, it's your fault that people are shining you. That was my head. And they helped me to realize that that's not true, that it is their decision to shun you. And you're not the one shunning them. They are the one shunning you. And it was like a huge shift in my head. It was like, oh, yeah. It's like, but you always train to be this victim, that if you're not following all the rules, you're doing something wrong. And the organization could not possibly do anything wrong.
Right.
And very traumatic to shift this slowly, but with professional help, you can save yourself so much trauma, so much time. You're absolutely right. I would definitely recommend it to anybody.
Absolutely.
Do you want to add anything else?
So kind of along those same lines, I would say one other thing that I found that is very important is really anybody who's kind of thinking like, okay, maybe this isn't true or whatever, do all of the research, right? There's nothing wrong with research. And the thing is, if you don't do the necessary research, you don't do the reading, you don't maybe watch the videos or whatever it is that you need to do, you're always going to be like, I wonder if they're right. I wonder if I'm wrong. You're always going to have that, and to me, that's the saddest position to be in, is to be somebody who's like, well, I'm living my own life, right? My lifestyle breaks all of their rules. I hope it's not real, because if it's real, then I'm in big trouble with God, like,
yes.
you need to do the reading and do all the research and make sure one way or the other, right? In theory, if you do the research and somehow it leads you back to being a Jehovah's Witness, which I personally strongly doubt, but if that happens, at least you will have done all of the research, right? And you don't have to wonder one way or the other, So I would say that's something that's that's very very important.
I think for JWs, those who are raised in it, it's very difficult to accept that concept that you could be reading somebody's book and not agree with it.
Right.
Because when you read JW books, and that's all what you're reading the Bible, you're reading the books, you have to agree with everything 100%. You know what I mean?
True.
So
yes.
They have this concept, if I read somebody who maybe is an ex-JW or even any other book that is like self-help or whatever, I have to accept everything that they say. It's so not true. You get to choose your own path, and you can read a very smart book, but then you say, you know what, I take, 30%, 40%, I believe it's true. He convinced me of this, but this one I'm not convinced. And that's how you create your own reality. But when you are JW, the reality is given to you because you have to accept everything, right?
Absolutely true. And it's an amazing freedom to be able to say, I'm going to watch this, I'm going to read this. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. And it's fine. Like, nobody even cares, really.
That's right.
That's only a thing in these types of groups. Other than that, this is what everybody is doing for the most part, or everybody should be doing, just take everything, analyze it, and whatever works, keep it. And if it doesn't work, then get rid of it,
That's exactly right.
So anyway, yeah.
Awesome. I love your shirt.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much. Stop shunning, please.
Music. I'm gonna post also underneath a link to your song, so everybody could, whoever didn't hear it yet, maybe they can hear it later. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Thank you very much for your story, for sharing your story. I hope it will spread to more people, give people courage to do something about their talents, because we were all, whatever talent that we had, it was always suppressed because you could only use your talents to grow, watchtowers, profits, or whatever it is that they wanted you to do. Anything outside was always viewed as not necessary, at least. You could be, I don't know, building a hospital, for orphans. That's no good because that takes away your focus from serving Jehovah. It's crazy.
It's so crazy.
Very glad that now you have that freedom. You took, the opportunity that you had, and you did something. You're inspirational to others. Thank you so much for being on this part of this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. Really had a good time talking with you, and all the best on everything you're working on as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Cliff.